Alain Delon, the French actor most famous for his roles in the films of New Wave director Jean-Pierre Melville, especially Le Samourai, has died. He was 88. He passed away peacefully in his home in Douchy, surrounded by his 3 children and his family, according to a statement released to the AFP news agency by his family. In addition to Le Samourai, Delon also appeared in Melville's brilliant heist film, Le Cercle Rouge, and En Flic. Some of his other significant films were René Clément's Purple Noon, Visconti's Rocco and His Brothers and the Leopard, Antonioni's L'Eclisse, Jose Giovanni's Two Men in Town, and Joseph Losey's Mr. Klein. After Jean-Paul Belmondo defined French cool at the beginning of the new wave in Godard's Breathless, Delon and director Melville very consciously redefined it in Le Samourai, in which he played a killer for hire, always adjusting his fedora, so it was just so. And the actor was consequently compared to James Dean, but the comparison to Dean was limited. While the American actor was given to emotional outbursts in his performances, Delon was far from effusive. What was taken for cool in Le Samourai could just seem cold in a lesser movie, such as Melville's En Flic. Nevertheless, it is hard for Americans to understand the extent of Delon's fame during the 1960s and 70s, not just in France, but in regions as diverse as Japan, Communist China, where a 1975 version of Zorro, starring Delon as the popular hero, was one of the first Western movies exhibited in the country after the Cultural Revolution, and Latin America. Delon's extraordinary appeal was crystallized in Le Samourai. Film scholar David Thompson described him as the enigmatic angel of French film, only 32 in 1967, and nearly feminine, yet so earnest and immaculate as to be thought lethal or potent. He was also close by then to the real French underworld. Thompson added, Delon is not so much a good actor as an astonishing presence. No wonder he was so thrilled to realize that the thing Melville most required was his willingness to be photographed. Roger Ebert called Delon the tough pretty boy of French movies, an actor so improbably handsome that his best strategy for dealing with his looks was to use a poker face. In Le Samourai, Melville meticulously follows Delon's assassin Jeff Koslow as he creates an alibi, knocks off the owner of a nightclub, makes it through a police lineup, finds that those who hired him have betrayed him, and is hunted by the police. The plot is far less important than the style of the movie, the style of Delon's portrayal of the killer. Delon's first major film was René Clément's 1960 Purple Noon, an adaptation of Patricia Highsmith's novel The Talented Mr. Ripley, with Delon as the sociopath Tom Ripley, who murders his friend and takes his identity. The film made the actor a star. It was restored in 2012 and screened at the Cannes Film Festival in 2013 as part of a career retrospective fading the actor. In Visconti's excellent, operatic Rocco and His Brothers, also made in 1960, Delon played the title character, part of a poor family, who moved north to Milan from southern Italy in search of greater opportunities. His rather passive character reluctantly becomes a boxer to support the family. A few years later, Delon worked for Visconti again, in the director's 1963 masterpiece, The Leopard, in which Burt Lancaster played a 19th-century Sicilian prince trying to cope with revolution and what it will mean for his family and his social class. Delon played his dashing nephew, who joins the revolutionaries, then throws in with the king's army. He had palpable chemistry in the film with the beautiful Claudia Cardinali. In 1960, Delon starred with Monica Vitti in Antonioni's L'Eclisse, the second entry in the director's justly famous Alienation trilogy. Delon was perfectly cast as a wheeler-dealer stockbroker who becomes involved with Vitti's character but is unwilling and unable to satisfy her emotional needs. In 1969, he starred with Romy Schneider and Maurice Ronit in the erotically charged thriller La Piscine. He starred with Richard Burton, Schneider, and Valentina Cortese in Joseph Losey's The Assassination of Trotsky, and a few years later worked for Losey in The Brilliant Mr. Klein, in which Delon gave a tightly controlled performance as a Catholic art dealer in occupied Paris who takes advantage as rich Jews with art collections are carted away, but begins to have problems of his own. He is increasingly mistaken for an elusive Jew who is using his name for secret operations. Delon served as one of the producers on the film. Delon starred in 3 films with a French superstar of an earlier generation, Jean Gabin crime dramas Any Number Can Win, The Sicilian Clan, and Two Men in Town, the last of which also sported, in a small role, a young Gerard Depardieu, and thus bridged 3 generations. Delon also had a supporting role as a photographer following Shirley MacLaine in the 1964 international production, The Yellow Rolls-Royce, starring Rex Harrison and Ingrid Bergman. The actor was among the large number of French stars and some American ones, including Kirk Douglas and Glenn Ford, who overpopulated René Clément's confusing story of the final days of the Nazi occupation of the French capital, Is Paris Burning? 1966. In 1971, Delon starred with Charles Bronson, Toshiro Mifune, Ursula Andress, and Cappuccini in the Terence Young-directed international production Red Sun. The Western, shot in Spain, was not much liked in the U.S., but enjoyed success in Europe and Asia. Delon, who developed an interest in Japan as a result of Les Samurai, long enjoyed a following in the country, where sunglasses branded with his name were a hit. In 1973, Delon reunited with his The Leopard co-star Burt Lancaster for the Michael Winner-directed thriller Scorpio, in which Delon played an assassin ordered to eliminate Lancaster's weary spy, who wants out of the gang. Strangely, Winner's previous film, The Mechanic, starring Bronson and Jan-Michael Vincent, had almost exactly the same plot. Alain Fabien Maurice Marcel Delon was born in Sceaux, Haute-Seine. His father was of French and Corsican-Italian descent, his mother of French and German ancestry. His parents divorced early on, and Delon's stormy childhood included frequent expulsions from school. After military service in French Indochina, he did odd jobs around Paris, where he encountered actor Jean-Claude Brialy, who invited him to the 1956 Cannes Film Festival, where Delon made some professional contacts. He made his film debut the next year with a small role in Yves Allégret's Send a Woman When the Devil Fails. While David O. Selznick was in Italy shooting A Farewell to Arms in Italy, or perhaps at Cannes, he met Delon and offered him a Hollywood contract provided that the nascent actor learn English, but Delon nixed any such notions. Though he did do 3 American films over the years, 1960 for crime drama Once a Thief with Anne Margaret and Van Heflin, and 1966 Western for Texas with Dean Martin, plus Airport 79, The Concorde, in which he played the captain of the troubled plane. During the early 1980s, there was a period in which Delon sought a career behind the camera, starting in 1981 with Pour la peau d'une flic, which he adapted from a novel by Jean-Patrick Monquet, directed and starred in Opposite and Parallade. Followed the next year by Le Choc, on which he and Robin Davis again adapted a Monquet novel and co-directed, though Delon went uncredited, and which starred Delon opposite Catherine Deneuve. And finally 1983's Le Battant, on which Delon was among those adapting a novel by André Karoff, directed with Davis, although Davis went uncredited this time, and starred. These films were all in the genre with which the actor was most comfortable, and with which he was most associated, crime drama, but they were only adequate efforts. He adapted several other novels into films during the 1980s, and wrote a couple of original screenplays. More significantly, Delon was a producer on 30 of his films. He starred as the title character in the French TV crime drama Franck Riva in 2003-04, and as Julius Caesar in the 2008 film Asterix at the Olympic Games. At the peak of his career, in 1969, the actor was associated with a scandal that had both criminal and political dimensions. Stevan Markovic, the former bodyguard for Delon, and his wife Natalie, who appeared with him in Les Samurai, was murdered and his corpse found in the forest, and investigators found a letter written by Markovic that tied the Delons to a Corsican fighter named François Marcantoni, who was subsequently tied to former French President Georges Pompidou. The Delons were questioned by police over the homicide, and it was unclear how far the scandal would spread. Only Marcantoni was convicted. Delon's love life was of keen interest to the French media. He had a relationship with German actress Romy Schneider from 1959 to 64, but he retained an emotional connection to her long thereafter. She ultimately died from a mixture of painkillers and alcohol in 1982, at the Caesars in 2008. Delon took to the stage to receive on her behalf an award marking what would have been her 70th birthday, and asked the audience to honor her with a standing ovation. Yet during his relationship with Schneider, he had an affair with Nick Haw of the Velvet Underground. Fathering a son, R.E. Bellone, he married Natalie Barthélemy in 1964 and had a son, Anthony. The couple divorced in 1969. Delon subsequently had a 15-year relationship with French actress Mireille Darc, and then one with Dutch model Rosalie van Bremen, with whom he had 2 children, but split in 2002. He was accorded an honorary Palme d'Or in 2019. His family placed him under conservatorship in 2024 after he had suffered a stroke in 2019.